All right, we're now recording. It is November 3. This is the C4 meeting, and Commissioner Savas, you are our only co-chair here right now. The meeting is yours.
Thank you, Trent. So just to clarify, you mentioned Mr. Markgraf is unable to attend tonight. Does that mean that is there someone here on his behalf to present the
Yes.
together? Okay.
Someone will be here. They're not here yet.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. We will, I guess, first do the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Trent, flag, please. Oh, nice. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. As you probably heard from Trent, Mayor Hodson will be joining us a little bit later. And that brings us to the housekeeping. First of all, approval of the September 1st minutes. Is there any amendments, or is there a motion to approve as is?
Make a motion to approve as is.
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Anyone not in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand or motion your hand or your virtual hand. Okay, seeing none, the minutes are approved. Trent, you have an update there on the field trip follow-up?
Yes, thank you very much. So once upon a time, we were talking about taking a housing trip to the great city of Eugene, who has a variety of shelter and shelter transition options that many in this group were curious about. And regrettably, by the time that we affirmed that enough people were going to go from this group, there were no bus drivers in the bus shuttle services offered in our area to be able to drive us down at that time. So we needed to pivot. We will pivot since that is still and remains an interest of this group. Of course, Tuesday will make some changes for us, but or may make some changes for us. We'll see how it goes. Nevertheless, that doesn't mean that we would not keep this desire by many of this group to continue pursuing information about housing options and how to pursue shelter within your jurisdictions and cities as partners with the Clackamas County Housing Authority and housing group at large for Clackamas County. Vahid Brown is here to talk more about some of the housing issues that have been raised by this group, questions from Wilsonville in particular, but also throughout C4 at large. One idea that we had, and jumping the gun here a little bit and rolling into our next conversation, Vahid, but one idea that Vahid and I had was taking advantage, maybe not of as a big group to go down in a big bus to certain areas, but for those cities that are ready to move towards putting housing in your jurisdictions and taking steps to pursue that, to maybe have a more catered trip with your council or jurisdiction and our housing team to go look at some of those options and be a lot more strategic and maybe create more of a micro tour for those ready and willing jurisdictions wanting to make that step, which is, I think, a strong use of our staff time. Very busy doing the great work that y'all continue to ask us and fund us to do through those measures out at Metro. Thank you. But also a good opportunity for those cities that are ready to take that step. We can get into the weeds with our housing team on how to make that happen. So that is a conversation for a future time. That's a pivot from a way to do this housing field trip that we were gonna do. And then maybe after Vahid's presentation and the Q&A that follows, we can talk more about that if there's questions or ideas on how to pursue that.
Great. Well, thank you, Trent. And I guess before we go to the next or the agenda item next, I would just want to mention that to me, I think one of the great things about the Eugene trip, or what Eugene Springfield is doing, is they have a variety of different models and opportunities, so that they really cover. It's not really a buy-in as to one size fits all. It's really just the opposite. They have several different models that they have down there to fit all different types of situations and people in their particular circumstances. So and they also have a nice what they call what they call a wet facility, which is a treatment center for people with drug and alcohol addiction specifically. And it's designed for that, built and designed for that very specifically, as well as mental health care there as well. So it really is, they really do have a full array of I think, offering and having services for virtually most populations in their particular circumstances. So I'll be there in November visiting, so I'll probably stop by if there's an opportunity to get something together here soon. Hopefully, as the new people come in, I'm assuming the elections will change some of the city council mayor seats, and maybe there'll be some new people here at C4. I won't have that sorted out till early next year, but maybe there's an advantage in making sure that the people that are here to carry forward representing C4 participate in that opportunity as well. So with that said, Trent, would you like to introduce Vahid?
Thanks very much. Vahid is one of my favorite people here at Clackamas County and does some of the hardest work, I think, that the county has to offer. And so I am always proud to bring him into this group and share with you all the great work that happens down at our housing offices. Vahid's been here for a long time, and he's going to help walk us through what's going on with the housing bond dollars, with the supportive housing services dollars, and a concept that's been brought up by this group who wants more questions about the Built for Zero work. And that's what I understand Vahid to be working through today, and we'll have some time for Q&A following that. So Vahid, the floor is yours. Welcome to C4 again.
Thank you, Trent. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Vahid Brown, the Housing Services Manager for Clackamas County in the Housing and Community Development Division. I'm going to share my screen so I can talk through a few slides on the topics that Trent just introduced. Let's see. Okay. Wrong one. This one. All right, so I'm going to give an update on the bond, the supportive housing services measure, and a little bit about Built for Zero implementation in Clackamas County, where we're at. First of all, the affordable housing bond, as you all know, 2018 voters in the metro region passed a bond that to fund the development of affordable housing in the Tri-County metro region. It's about $658 million in that bond over the life of the program. Clackamas County's proportional amount for that is $117 million. And quite a lot of it has been committed or spent, and new units are online and coming online soon. So Tukwila Springs in Gladstone is done and fully leased, 48 permanent supportive housing units for older adults experiencing homelessness, as well as folks with a connection to Gladstone, people who are from Gladstone, and people who identify as Indigenous or Native American. And supportive services are provided there by NARA, the Native American Addiction and Recovery Association. Fuller Road Station, 100-unit affordable apartment with 30 units of permanent supportive housing for folks who are extremely low income and are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness, and come with supportive services case management associated with those units. Those began leasing in September. The goal is to finalize the lease up by the end of December at that project. Clackamas Women's Services is going to partner with us to provide the supportive services in the 30 PSH or permanent supportive housing units in that project. And construction is underway at Maple Apartments in Oregon City, Merrillhurst Commons in Lake Oswego, and Good Shepherd Village in Happy Valley. The goals for the Clackamas County bond implementation are here. So we were looking to create new housing for 2,500 residents, county residents. That's by developing approximately 812 units. Half of them are 406 to meet the needs of families. At least 40% of the units must provide housing for extremely low income families in the county. That's people that earn 30% or less of area median income. And create affordable homes for low income families earning between 60 and 80% of area median income with up to 10% of the funding. So those are the goals. Here's where we are on track to meet those goals. We are going to exceed all of them. So the unit, this table shows the Tequila Springs, Fuller Road Stations, Fuller Road Station, Good Shepherd Village, Maple Apartments, Merrillhurst Commons, Lake Grove, which would be 50 units and is kind of not in construction yet, but is in its early development stages in Lake Oswego, and Hillside Park, the redevelopment of Hillside Park, which will produce the largest number of units of any of these developments. And with 78% of the total bond allocation committed, you can see that we are set to exceed the number of units. We're at 109%, the number of units to serve extremely low income households at 110%, and the number of family size units at 127% of our goals. There is some remaining uncommitted or unallocated bond funding that will go to a solicitation, a request for proposals again in the coming year. So that's where we are in terms of bond implementation. The Housing Authority is doing amazing work with a lot of development partners and cities to bring these new homes online and to provide more affordable housing to our community. Briefly, an update on supportive housing services. So we're finalizing this week our first year report for year one of implementation, which ended at the June 30th this fiscal year. And so we have our outcomes for our first year of implementation, and some of the highlights are here. We were able to provide permanent supportive housing. That's rental subsidy or site-based affordable housing to extremely low-income folks who are experiencing long-term homelessness, chronically houseless folks with disabling conditions, to 170 people. This is a sea change for Clackamas County, and it's going to continue with as we continue to implement this measure year over year. As I've spoken many times, permanent supportive housing is the evidence-based intervention best suited to ending chronic homelessness in our communities. It's the most expensive and difficult to expand in terms of programmatic areas to provide housing and services to folks experiencing homelessness. In a typical year before the measure, we would see new permanent supportive housing resources come online in the tens, and now we're seeing them expand in the hundreds. So this is an order of magnitude change for Clackamas County and our ability to really meet the needs of the most vulnerable people who are really suffering with long-term experiences of not having access to housing. We also supported 100 units of shelter throughout the first year. Our year one goal was 65. So that's a significant achievement for the county in expanding access to safety off the streets for folks in our community who are living in the woods or in vehicles or on sidewalks. Our regional long-term rent assistance program, RLRA, which is the cornerstone of the affordable housing component of the supportive housing services measure, began also in the year one, and we issued 202 vouchers to households experiencing homelessness. 122 of those were leased up as of June 30th, and the remainder of the 80 have either leased up since then or are still in a housing search and working with case managers to remove barriers they may be having to finding and leasing up into a unit. We also had as one of our top priorities in our local implementation plan the expansion of culturally specific services in Clackamas County, historically something that we've lacked. We have not had a lot of culturally specific partners able to provide housing services to people of different racial and ethnic identities by organizations with staff and leadership that identify in the same way as them, look like them, come from communities and experiences similar to those they're serving. And so now we're really seeing a lot of progress there. 6 new culturally specific agencies have been awarded funding that serve communities identifying as Black or African American, as Latinx or Hispanic, as Native American or Indigenous, and with the immigrant and refugee communities. So this is really great progress on our goals to expand culturally specific services in the county. Looking ahead to year 2, we executed 6 procurements for new services towards the end of year 1. And we're now in the next several weeks finalizing the last contracts pursuant to those procurements or solicitations, covering a whole wide range of programs and services. The Veterans Village, a very successful program established about 4 years ago to provide a transitional shelter community and assistance in transitioning to permanent housing to veterans experiencing homelessness in Clackamas County. We procured for the ongoing new and ongoing services for that program. It was originally established as a pilot, and our procurement authority for that original program had come to its end, so we needed to procure for ongoing services. That contract was awarded to the incumbent, Do Good Multnomah, just done a great job at that project. We also funded a pretty significant expansion of our shelter system, including a new family shelter program for folks identifying as Native American or Indigenous that will be operated by NAYA, the Native American Youth and Family Services Association, NAYA. Yeah. And folks identifying as Indigenous or Native American are the most disproportionately represented ethnic group in our system in terms of people experiencing homelessness. They experience homelessness at more than 3 times the rate of their representation in the population overall. We also are significantly expanding our street outreach programs. So it's really exciting here, our ability, and this connects to Built for Zero, our ability to be out in the community, connect with people who are camping or living in a vehicle or showing up in your downtowns and really struggling. We're able to meet them where they are, connect them with services, provide them safety off the streets, and move them with support towards opportunities for permanent housing. And here we have contracts that have been executed or are coming to the board soon with the Immigrant and Refugee Community Organization, with Love One, a fantastic local nonprofit that many of you are familiar with, that does a pop-up shower and free laundry program, with Providence Better Outcomes Through Bridges, with the Clackamas Service Center, and with a small culturally specific agency called Up and Over. So lots of new street outreach. Justice system diversion. We're expanding significantly the law enforcement assisted diversion program that's operated by Central City Concern in partnership with the DA and the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. This is a really successful program that started in about 2016 that diverts people who are experiencing homelessness, who are involved in the justice system. Maybe they're running afoul of the law for a variety of reasons, many of them related to being homeless, offensive littering, trespassing, things like this, but also with folks that have substance use issues and are getting into issues with the justice system due to that. And they're diverted from arrest or further involvement in the justice system by engagement with intensive case management services, including certified alcohol and drug counselors, peers, and housing navigators that can connect people to housing. Also funding peer support services to help folks that are residents in housing authority programs and properties to prevent eviction and prevent homelessness from those households, as well as supportive housing case management for Shelter Plus Care. Shelter Plus Care is a federal rent subsidy program that comes through the county. The Shelter Plus Care component is the federal rents, and we provide the supportive services that wrap around folks and help them remain successful in their housing. So those are areas where we've committed about $7.5 million to expand our housing system and our system of response to homelessness. It's the largest single investment in the expansion of our housing programs in the history of Clackamas County. And it won't be the last time that we'll have the largest. We will continue to be making strides in increasing and expanding our programs. Built for Zero. So many of you have heard about Built for Zero. It's a national initiative led by a nonprofit based in New York called Community Solutions. Many communities around the country, dozens now, are enrolled in Built for Zero and have been since about 2018. And Built for Zero, the name of the initiative, alludes to getting to zero, right? Getting to zero people experiencing homelessness in the community. And Built for Zero supports communities looking at veteran homelessness. So some communities choose a goal of, we want 0 veteran homelessness in our community, or we want 0 family homelessness or 0 chronic homelessness. Clackamas County joined Build for Zero with a goal of 0 homelessness overall. So that's pursuant to the county's goal of having homelessness be rare, brief, and not recurring in Clackamas County. Before I continue to talk about our Build for Zero implementation, I just want to acknowledge Commissioner Savas has a hand raised. So
Yeah, Vahid, it seems like a good time to maybe ask this question. I've been asked it before, and I'm not sure I'm giving out the right answer. So when someone is in a transitional hotel stay, whether it's directly at one of the county facility or the county contracts, or whether it is directly with the nonprofits, are they considered homeless?
yes, they are still literally homeless. Yes.
Okay, so they need to transition into something permanent. That's the answer I've been giving them, so I appreciate that. And then just briefly, could you expand on that Native American shelter you talked about? You're not talking about the Red Lodge, you're talking about something different, right?
Yes, correct. Red Lodge was a small Native American specific, culturally specific agency that was assisting folks transitioning out of incarceration and re-entry into the community. So this is a new family shelter program that will be operated by NAIA.
Okay, great. It's certainly been a need out there that hasn't been fully recognized. Is there adequate capacity to meet the need for that population?
I mean, we're definitely growing capacity. So we have new partnerships this year with NARA and NAIA, the 2 preeminent culturally specific agencies in our county. So that's where we're investing where the data says we need to, right? So our most disproportionately represented communities in our homelessness system are Black or African American and Native American or Indigenous, and that's where we're expanding our programming. Capacity is a challenge. I mean, I think that's something that further as into this conversation. I think one of the biggest impediments to the really rapid expansion of our programming is workforce challenges with our partners, and the ability to quickly hire and train and retain staff to provide these services. And that has been a challenge that it's not unique to Clackamas County. Washington and Multnomah County are facing the same issues.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Vahid. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I also see Ed. Ed, do you have a related question?
2 very quick questions. Number 1, who has title to all these facilities that we are building and supporting?
Who has title to the facilities that we're building and supporting?
Well,
do you mean
Cold Springs, as an example, is that owned by the city of Gladstone? Is it owned by someone else, or is it owned by Clackamas County?
Yeah, Tequila Springs is owned by the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Other developments the ownership will be the partnership that put together the funding. So the county would not be the title holder of the property. So it varies depending on the project.
The other quick question. Homelessness has been an ongoing problem for years. And I think it will continue to be an ongoing problem. You think that we're actually making progress in reducing the number of people who are homeless in Clackamas County?
Yeah, that's my job. I'm doing the best that I can with the really amazing new resources we have. I mean, the data says yes. So the last time we did a street count, a point in time count of people experiencing homelessness in the county was January of this year. The previous most recent point in time count was in January of 2019. 2020 and 2021 were impacted by COVID most dramatically, and so we did not conduct an in-person street count. The overall number of people counted who were experiencing homelessness in January of 2022 was 50%, 49% lower than the number of people counted in 2019. So on that data point, we are seeing impacts in the new investments and programming that we're rolling out in the county. but there's also new pressures. Go ahead.
Wait, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Vahid. Carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So just to return to Built for Zero, Built for Zero, how it works, what it looks like in terms of implementation is the ability of a community to develop a quality by name list of everyone experiencing homelessness in the community, a by name list or a BNL. That's sort of the core of this initiative. What we had prior to Built for Zero was our coordinated housing access line. So and that required that folks contact us or get in touch with us, or we're able to get in touch with them through mobile coordinated housing access assessments that were conducted at places like the Father's Heart or Clackamas Service Center. But really that's previous to Built for Zero. Our best sense of who it is that we need to serve are people that reached out to us and contacted us, right? Through coordinated entry, coordinated housing access. Built for Zero uses street outreach, partnerships with all kinds of communities, community providers and community partners, libraries, cities, police departments, schools, food banks, and we identify and monitor on a weekly basis the by name list of people experiencing homelessness. And we do what's called case conferencing with this list, where we have all of our network of providers in the same Zoom call, someday, maybe in the same room. And we go down this list that's prioritized by vulnerability, name by name, identify who is in touch with this person, what program is connected with them. Does anyone know who they are, where they are, what their need is? And then a prioritization exercise is conducted. And out of that list, the top priority folks that are most vulnerable, have been outside for the longest time, are not connected to services and programs, they're moved to being matched with those programs. They're matched with housing navigation, they're matched with safety off the streets, which means shelter, and they're connected with programs and services to get them into housing. So the goal there is to be able to see week over week, really in real time, how many people are on the list, how quickly we're connecting them to housing, and how quickly we can make that list shorter and shorter with the goal of getting that list to zero. So we've begun implementing the by name list. We have a by name list now. We have new street outreach programs that are helping us manage this list. We have started the case conferencing process where we prioritize people and move them to matching. And we're doing the matching with our new contracted services to house people. So this is a way to advance lots of our goals. It's equitable. We're able to include an equity lens in this. It's equitable in the sense that we're serving the most needy first, and moving through the list on that basis. The most vulnerable, the most in need are the ones that come to the top and move to programs. And we have enough resources to really move everyone to programs over time. And that's in essence the philosophy and approach of the Built for Zero initiative. But I'm going to stop sharing so we can all see each other and entertain any further questions.
Mayor Stemple.
How do you determine who's the most needy first?
That's a great question. So the assessment that we do with the folks that get them on the list. So everyone who's called coordinated access is given an assessment to get on the list. And that includes a vulnerability index assessment. We ask folks about their length of time homelessness, disabling conditions, health conditions. And so the assessment allows us to prioritize the list before the meeting, right? The case conferencing meeting. And then in the meeting, real-time knowledge by the community about that person or that household informs the decision. So if the assessment says these 10 people are the most vulnerable based on their length of time homelessness, their disabling conditions, their health concerns, and and that would be how the computer put it out, right? But in the case conferencing meeting, the law enforcement decision diversion folks can say, number 16 on the list, I just saw him on Thursday. He lost his wheelchair and he's had surgery. This guy is really, really vulnerable. someone else confirms, yeah, he came into the Clackamas Service Center, guy is really struggling. Okay, we really need to prioritize this person. And so we have data through our assessments that give us a first pass at a ranked list. And then the case conferencing process allows community providers to provide direct input.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so glad to be able to hear this presentation, Vahid, and everyone. Thanks for everyone's work on this. I've been reading about Built for Zero and also heard some other cities talk about it. Some of us might have heard this at some of the mayor's meetings, either using Built for Zero or something like it. My question is, I'll just use my community, for example. We certainly don't have a large number of people, but I want to talk about how the citizens see situations. They see vulnerable people living in their car or living in a wooded area near their house or in a park. And, they get very concerned about what are we doing out here in Wilsonville? We don't have a structure. They can't see anything. They don't know how we're going to connect to it, these services. And so what I'm hearing today is really good messaging that we can share with people. But I wondered if you could, and by the way, in Wilsonville, if we finish the hiring process, we are going to be hiring a behavioral health specialist. And I know some of the cities have some of those services. So the ideal situation would be that this skilled person would meet some of the people that I'm describing. Maybe would they use the same vulnerability interview that you're talking about and then be able to connect with you and say, well, here's, Mr. So-and-so that I've just talked to, and are they able to get involved in what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. So yes, please, if there are staff in your cities, I know that Wilsonville, Milwaukee, I know some other communities, Oregon City, have or will soon have this kind of behavioral health staff or someone who has a liaison role to folks experiencing homelessness in the community. We would like to kind of, get better acquainted with every one of those folks, and invite them to case conferencing meetings. So that whole process of like, who is the most vulnerable? If a behavioral health specialist in the city of Wilsonville says, well, David is really struggling and I've seen him, or not. I mean, and I know I have seen David. He goes to the library on a regular basis. That's really valuable information that will allow us to connect with David, for example, and connect him with services. So yes.
So the other part of that is, let's say this David, is ranked really high and needs to get into one of the qualifies maybe for one of the housing options that you've described. Then given space, I guess it's all a matter of, is space available now, and we just keep in touch with this person and keep following them along.
Yeah, that's right. And we are moving people into housing quickly. I mean, like I said, the system flow from folks experiencing long-term homelessness to being housed permanently with supportive case management now is 10 times greater than it was 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And it's increasing. So whereas we had 122 households, 170 people leased on Arla in year one, we're looking at over 300 for year two. So we're going to continue to increase that. And that's the most intensive intervention, the permanent supportive housing. Not everyone needs permanent supportive housing. Some folks need a few months of rent assistance or a rapid rehousing, as we call it. And so we'll be able to problem solve that and match people to the most appropriate resource. But yes, I think that if your cities have staffs that would be well positioned to engage with us on this work of reaching out to the community members, connecting them with services, getting folks on our list, our by name list, please reach out to me. And I will thank you.
Great. Mayor Buck.
Thank you, Commissioner Sevis. Thank you, Vahid. Really great to hear the successes on both the housing bond and progress on SHS. If in terms of preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place, can you help us understand a little bit more about the voucher programs and the difference between a Section 8 voucher, emergency are there emergency vouchers funded through SHS? I know there was because of COVID, other state funded emergency. So it gets confusing. And then do I understand correctly that ARLA is a kind of a project specific voucher?
It's both. ARLA is both a project specific and tenant specific. So it works like a Section 8 voucher in that way. So folks don't need to be approved to move into a bond project or something like that. Most of our ARLA vouchers, in fact, are used on the open market in multifamily apartments. So that is kind of like a Section 8 voucher that's more flexible, easier to use, has a higher payment standard, and is prioritized for folks experiencing homelessness, especially those experiencing long-term homelessness. Section 8, of course, is available to anyone who meets the income requirements, right? They don't have to be homeless. ARLA is really meant for folks in homelessness. So that is I think maybe one of the fundamental differences to Section 8 is that, well, there's a few. Section 8, it's 3 to 5 year wait list. ARLA is not. It's now. We connect you, we prioritize. There's a voucher, go. It has a more flexible payment standard, so we're able to house folks in units in parts of the county that we couldn't with the Section 8 voucher. And it has that prioritization that it serves people experiencing homelessness, whereas Section 8 is for low-income households. We do have, though, Section 8 vouchers at the Housing Authority, preference and mainstream vouchers that serve folks experiencing homelessness, vouchers for youth aging out of foster care, and some emergency housing vouchers. We got a tranche of emergency housing vouchers last year. We were the first county in Oregon to use them all and lease them all up. And we did it in months. And so that's gone. We don't have those anymore, but because we were so fast on getting those utilized, we are, I understand that we're in conversations with HUD about receiving another batch of emergency housing vouchers, or EHVs.
So okay, thank you for that. So there's no component of the SHS that helps house people who are, for whatever reason, loss of a job or whatnot, need either short-term or more or kind of more longer-term-ish rental assistance?
There wasn't in year one, but there is now, and there will be more. So SHS funds can and will be used for homelessness prevention and short-term assistance, like you're talking about, Mayor Buck.
Okay.
In year one, our emphasis was on getting the ARLA program out and really, expanding shelter services. So our all of our progress there was on permanent supportive housing and shelter. But in year two, we're moving into prevention. So exactly what you're talking about, someone is about to get evicted and we can prevent that eviction with a short-term infusion of funds.
Okay. And is that is the access to those funds through the same coordinated housing? And so what I just like Googling, I am in needed housing in Clackamas County, and it takes me to the website. It says that there's up to a 5-week wait to even receive a call back. So yep. I'm going to lose my housing, and now I have a 5-week wait. So is it, who staffs that? Is it a county staff line, or is that something that's outsourced?
It's both. So there is a core staff at social services that sort of mans the phone lines, so to speak, or not mans, that's gender language, but and we also have partners like Clackamas Women's Services that operate the CHA, or Coordinated Housing Access, and all those contracts I mentioned with outreach providers. All of those outreach providers are going to be doing coordinated access assessments. So we'll be sort of distributing the coordinated entry system out into the community, whereas before it's kind of been at red soils in Oregon City. It is a challenge, right? We do something like 90% of those calls are for rent assistance, right? So we're seeing an elevated number of calls for emergency rent assistance to the coordinated entry system. Like 10% of them are folks who are experiencing homelessness and looking for support. There is still funding for rent assistance that's flowing through that program, and the Supportive Housing Services program will be committing funds to continue that program and to continue to provide rent assistance to folks who are calling that line. We are working to clear that backlog and get that shorter, but the move to Built for Zero is also a part of our getting ahead of things. So we're able to identify folks who are really vulnerable in the community, get them on the list directly, not having to have them go through the, call the number, get a call back, and meet their needs, in a quicker way.
Well, I don't want, I don't want to press the issue. I just, like, if I'm in the community and I know that Clackamas County is sitting on tens of millions of dollars in supportive housing services, I might say, why can't we hire people to answer these phone calls?
Yeah, it's something that the director's office is looking at, areas where we can invest exactly what you're talking about. How can we relieve the pressure on the system? Where do we need to look at system expansion and invest in that? That is something that is an active assessment. We understand this is an urgent issue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Heising.
Hello, hi Vahid, thank you for your presentation. It's always nice to hear lots of good news. I have probably two questions for you. One is, and I think I already know the answer to this, but I just wanted confirmation on the Hillside Park project. Did the earmark funding come through that the county put in for with our senators? Do you know? Has that finally been signed off on?
Oh, let me see.
I can help with this. Earmarks
Great.
are in my bucket, actually. So thank you for asking about that. We have a $4 million earmark request that was submitted by Congressman Schrader. It was not submitted by the senators. And as you know, right? And as you know, the Congress passed a continuing resolution and pushed the budget decision into December. And so we were waiting. December is when that question will be taken up by Congress again. The good news is, on our last smoky day here in Oregon, we had Senator Wyden at the site. And then just yesterday, we had Senator Merkley at the site to reemphasize the value of this project, to touch and feel what that project is and know what they're fighting for that $4 million threshold for that particular project. So I can say with utmost confidence that we have literally done every possible thing we can do, including getting our senators to the site and touch those walls to understand the value of advocating for that project when that budget conversation comes forward. And I feel like it's always important to say it's going to take an act of Congress, and that's an awkward phrase for its very own reasons, right? So I want to put those things together, but we are doing literally everything we can for that project to get those dollars, because it takes it, if my understanding is right, it's 100 units now. It will be 500 units total once it's fully built out. 50% of that with the current funding mechanism would be for affordable housing at or below 60% AMI. If that congressional funding comes through, that bumps up to 75%. So it's a huge increase in that overall thing that would become affordable housing for that project.
Yeah, and the city is keenly interested in that outcome, and we also have money that we are willing to put toward that to help make that possible. I was really hoping that Merkley was here or went to Hillside yesterday. I knew he was in town, so great to hear that. My other question is just, right now there's a bunch in the news about, and overall, about how we have these expiring long-term agreements for affordable housing all over the country. And there was just an article in the paper about this really impacting Multnomah County. So I'm wondering how that is going to hit Clackamas County and what the plan is for supportive housing services and the other Metro bond dollars to kind of help ameliorate whatever those impacts might be.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilor Heisey. I don't have an answer. I don't know. I mean, it's in my program, my remit is to end chronic homelessness in the county, and that's the focus. But you're right that this is there's a horizon of some really challenging things coming up, where the covenants, the affordability and covenants will be expiring on a number of developments. I know that this is on the legislative sort of horizon or agenda of the state. Don't know what if anything will be taken up with regard to that in the next session. The Oregon Housing Alliance hasn't been meeting for a while, but it will start again meeting in December. So might have some updates there on that, but I can take that question back to my partner, the Housing Authority.
Yeah, and related to that, and you might have a slightly better grasp on this, is just even with the the COVID dollars expiring, and you're already seeing an uptick in the demand for the services that Mayor Buck was sort of getting at. So is that being considered as part of how is this overall strategy going to all fit together? Because of course the concern is that these are people who have effectively been prevented from becoming houseless for quite some time by the services that they've benefited from through the pandemic and other resources that have been made available.
Yep. Yeah, and I briefly alluded to this, but part of our strategy is to bridge or to continue really the program of kind of emergency rent assistance through the county that have been funded by the COVID related dollars and is running out with SHS. The 25% of the SHS revenue can be spent on population B according to the measure, which are folks who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness. Now that threshold is a little bit higher than the emergency rent assistance threshold, which is really, can you demonstrate that your family had an economic impact to COVID, which is a very low threshold. And so more or less everyone that came in the queue was receiving assistance. This will be, we need to honor the measure's intent, which says that there must be a substantial risk of homelessness. So I'm working with the Social Services Division at Health, Housing, and Human Services to continue that program, to establish the parameters for continuing to provide that emergency rent assistance to folks that would be at risk of experiencing homelessness, and to do so before the money runs out.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's going to potentially be need for some sort of additional gap services for the people who don't meet that criteria, but are still struggling. I'm just trying to think about, we don't have a whole lot of assistance we can put out of our city budget, but we do have a small amount of money we at least put aside for bill assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes with people like this, if it's just getting them to apply and accept the support of paying those bills, that can be the difference between being able to stay in their housing and not being able to stay in their housing. So this is helpful to me to understand how important those programs will continue to be, and whether or not we need to really prioritize making sure that those contracts with the service providers that distribute those funds for us continue to work as they have so far. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure Vahid was watching or part of our meetings this week, but this week we, to my surprise, we approved, or I learned in the approval process that there's CARES Act dollars still remaining that we approved to be spent for this very purpose. I believe this is the same one. What I'm blown away by, actually, at every week when we see some of these contracts come forward on our consent agenda for discussion on consent on Thursday, for discussion on Tuesday, how much work the staff are bringing to us for the approval. So we're approving significant amounts of housing dollars. Some of it is in the supportive housing services dollars, and some of it is in the federal CARES Act. So I was really pleasantly surprised to see that some of that's happening. And our discussion was along the lines, what does happen when that dries up? We might be on the last piece of that, and bridging that into the future is the very thing we talked about this week. So I know that we also have Adam Brown, and Adam is the part of our staff from the Housing Authority. And I know that we're still working on growing our staff. We need to do this as all the other counties are. And I just appreciate really how quickly we have responded. But we still have a lot of work to do as far as staffing to get more of that out. I'm always amazed how complex the services are, and the acronyms of all the different nuances of all these different funding streams and the populations and the facilities within the programs. So we're trying to leverage everything we can, and that's where it gets pretty complex. So my hat's off to Vahid and Adam and all of our other staff that are doing all the work the best they can. So thank you. Mayor Buck, see your hand up.
Thank you, Chris. Sorry, just one couple more questions. If to shelter, Vahid, you talked about a couple hundred units, 100 units of shelter supported in this first year. What could you give us an idea of what is the shelter count, and talk to us about the motel program, which I know in the packet mentioned as being successful. I thought that there had been new resources. Is the county being able to avail itself of those new resources and expanding that motel program?
Yeah, we just recently expanded our motel program to include another contracted hotel. So we've got 51 rooms under contract at 2 sites with the Father's Heart providing case management and navigation assistance. Those are contracted rooms. We're also, renting rooms on a by night basis at different hotels through 2 programs of the county for folks in emergent needs. So we have a vulnerability panel that meets on a weekly basis, and when someone is really needing to get off of the street immediately, then we step in right away. We've also funded very like all of our partners. I mean, it's Clackamas Women's Services, Northwest Housing Alternatives, Impact Northwest, the list goes on and on and on, that have contracts to provide housing navigation and placement support to folks experiencing homelessness. And they have flexible client service dollars that can place people in motels as part of that journey. And it's often very important that folks do so, because it's difficult to apply for an apartment if you can't take a shower and that kind of thing. So that is a growing resource that is flexible. It's scattered site, it's multi-agency. I gave an update to the board a few months ago that pegged that number of that at 40 units over those contracts, but that was at previously existing contracts. New contracts are coming online week over week that are expanding that number significantly. Now, this is all, and we have a phase 2 award, not a funding award, but we've moved to phase 2 in the state's grant process for turnkey, for Project Turnkey, and are actively pursuing the use of that potential resource to purchase a hotel for permanent use as a transitional housing program. I have high hopes there, but property negotiations are complicated and squirrely things, so we'll see. That's SHS. So here we're talking about 50 contracted, 40 plus. It's already over plus in scattered site usage by our partners. That's SHS additional capacity to our status quo system. We have an annual inventory of our housing programs, the COC housing inventory. I don't have that at my fingertips, but there's quite a significant inventory of other capacity that pre-existed SHS. So Clackamas Women's Services provides domestic violence shelter. I think that's in the tens. NHA provides up to 13 households at a time with family shelter. The Lake Oswego Shelter Ministry has up to 4 households at a time in their transitional program. Dev Northwest has a program for youth and foster folks aging out of foster for shelter and emergency housing. So we have a growing inventory of shelter.
So it's kind of a network of smaller but we don't have, there's no shelter, congregate type shelter space, but there is, aside from the, not overnight, at least we have one to daytime in Oregon City.
Yeah, in terms of congregate shelter, our system currently only has that for severe weather and smoke and heat and that kind of thing. And so yeah, there's the Oregon City, there's one in Canby, there's one in Estacada, and there's one in Molalla.
And Vahid, I don't know I know that recently there's somewhat recently there's a tri-county planning board that's been put together to find ways to better coordinate, and at the same time under this we've now heard a call from the mayor of our largest city to reallocate how these funds are allocated, right, to reallocate the funds, the SHS dollars. So can you talk about what, I mean, in your experience, where do you see as the best opportunities for coordination between the counties? I mean, even with all of the providers, I'm sure you see how there's so much overlap.
Yeah.
and duplication of efforts. And so where do you see as the greatest opportunities? And can you speak a little bit just in your experience of someone who's programming and working to program all these dollars? What would happen if someone pulled the rug out and said, oh, next year we're cutting your funding in half?
Yeah, I'll speak to those two different things. So I do staff the Tri-County Planning Body for Clackamas County. It is up and running, and it's meeting again next week. And I think in its first business meeting, which was a public meeting, we did highlight the 3 counties that highlight areas that we identified for the TCPB, the Tri-County Planning Body, of some immediate opportunities for Tri-County regional coordination that we identified. One of them is around data and system access. So, coordinated housing access is different in the 3 different counties. And sort of some low-hanging fruit is, what if there were a single regional point where there was no wrong door, not just in Clackamas County, and there wasn't just a no wrong door, not just in Multnomah County, but a no wrong door for anyone in the region to get connected to the most appropriate resource for them. The next one is capacity, provider capacity. So if I'm experiencing with my contracted providers, we can't hire up, or we lost 2 people that went to work at FedEx because they get $1 more an hour and there's no trauma associated with the job. Okay, that's tough. That's kind of a tough thing to deal with. Multnomah County, Washington County dealing with similar challenges with workforce. So we need to think about a regional strategy to grow a workforce that allows us to grow the capacity to meet the need and spend the resources. And we also highlighted some areas where the regional long-term rent assistance program could benefit from the Tri-County Planning Body's involvement, in terms of it's challenging to leverage this rental subsidy with the affordable housing development, because it's a 10-year measure, and the financing sort of approach to affordable housing typically requires at least a 30-year commitment to this of rental subsidy to the project in order for the bank to finance it and to consider that as part of the capital stack. A 10-year commitment of rental assistance on a building that's going to have a 60-year affordability covenant, that's a challenge. So we need help with how are we going to get the banks to work with us to really leverage this resource to help us create more affordable housing. So that's one. So those are 3 examples of areas where I think the TCBB, the county's highlighted for them. What would happen if for some reason or other, my SHS budget was cut in half? Well, half of the people that we've housed and committed ongoing rent assistance for would lose their ongoing rent assistance. I mean, that would be part of it. I don't know how else to think about this. I mean, if we've committed year-over-year funding to contracted providers, we've also committed year-over-year contracts with landlords to provide rent assistance to an ever-growing number of people. We're making commitments that are gonna, that aren't annual commitments. They have follow-on year consequences. But this is a political issue, so I'm going to be cautious and stop there.
Oh, thank you. I know I don't put you in a difficult spot, but that's very helpful information. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm hoping, I'm watching that as well. I'm hoping that that's a more of an issue between the city of Portland and Multnomah County, that they can maybe better work together with the resources they have, and maybe combine them in a more coordinated way. We're already learning this painfully obvious that it takes a long time to really build the staffing and build the momentum that we're making here, and to see that be cut away or taken away, that would be devastating. You can't build a system overnight. We certainly learned that in the last 12, 14, 16 months. Isn't that right, Vahid? Yeah. So well, again, thank you for what you are doing, and for the successes that we have had. We still have a long ways to go. So great discussion. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Anything else for the good of the order on this topic?
I think I would just like to add, on top of what Vahid was sharing about coordination throughout the counties, is coordination throughout the county. And that's us. That's right here. You're a coordinating committee, right? And the work that the county does is in partnership, and can be in partnership with all of you, the cities, and you're all in very strategic positions, right? In leadership roles in your cities. And so where there's opportunities to partner, the housing authority, the housing programs, what Vahid does with our cities, if you want us to talk about that here, if we want to take leadership roles in this at C4, you tell me and we'll make it happen, right? That's how C4 works. That's the coordinating work that can happen here if y'all want to go in that direction. And I want to extend that invitation again for those cities that are ready and interested in moving and learning more about like what shelter capacity looks like and what a menu of shelter options looks like, and you want to go see some like on the ground details of that, I think Vahid and I are ready to sort of put a small bus together with your council and go and look at that menu at the right places based on what you need and want to do. So this coordinating body here has power to move the needle on this housing conversation. And I hope that y'all feel comfortable letting me know how to direct work to come back to you for those types of questions.
Yeah, well, thank you, Trent. There is one thing that was discussed here just momentarily, just a bit ago, and that was the capacity, as Vahid was talking about, the growing need for what is currently now the motel rooms. Because we asked the question along the way, there's 50 that we're directly contracting and another 40 that we're going with some of the other providers for a total of about 90 plus rooms. And that number, as Vahid's alluded to, is growing. So we're trying to get an understanding as we're looking at purchasing hotels, buying a hotel, because we heard from the state that we can buy one hotel. So we obviously want to buy the biggest hotel we can to help defray the cost. But the other thing that maybe a lot of people don't know, I'm realizing, is that the turnkey is not limited to hotels. If we were able to buy an apartment complex, for example, that would be something that would be eligible and probably cheaper per room. So any of you all, again, to Trent's point about this, about what our partner cities here can do, you know, some of the larger hotels are in cities, and some of the larger apartment complexes, not all of them. There's some large ones in Clackamas County as well, unincorporated, but there are some opportunities out there that are within the cities if the city's willing to be a partner in making that come together. That's what we have found out on our spreadsheet of all the available hotels in Clackamas County. The larger ones are in the cities.
How about, sorry to jump in, but how about mobile home parks? Are they eligible?
I don't know. I can ask that question. I think that there's usually frowned upon because some of the inventory and some of these parks, I know most of the parks pretty well. Some of the inventory or the homes, which are owned by the occupant and they're on leased land, typically, some of those are updated and nice, new, have a number of amenities. They're great. And then some of them are the older, decrepit, tired, have a lot of health issues, mold, leaks, so forth. So that would be sticky because you know, you're either going to buy can't really afford to buy the property out, I don't think, and then lease them because you don't have good inventory. So I don't think it's really turnkey, right? I don't think it's really a turnkey type of a situation like a hotel or perhaps an apartment complex that's available.
So Clackamas County helped advocate on the language for that bill when it was passed in the legislature, and we were very specifically trying to create vague language on what could be used for this. And so hotels is listed in specifically, and then it says, and I don't remember the exact verbiage, but and other like buildings is basically the messaging. So the intent is that it's a similar multi-unit facility, I think, rather than like little one-off facilities like what like a mobile home park would provide. So a big success, I think, from Clackamas County to create that flexibility in that. If that's something that we are able to leverage, then great. But it's specifically, I think, and the intent was to create it for those, you know, multi-door sort of units.
Yeah, the beauty about the apartments is that they already have adequate sized kitchens, they're already living quarters, whereas hotels are marginal with kitchenettes or no kitchenettes, right? So they're going to need some investment to bring them up to some better living quarters. Mayor Fitzgerald, you've been waiting, so.
Thank you. So I want to circle back. We have a couple more minutes here, and we've talked about, you know, in the slides, you have a lot of complexity there that we can spend more time reading about. But what about the workforce shortages, you know, in order to staff all of these needs is one of the big problems that that you mentioned, Vahid. What about addiction treatment? And I know that's not an easy one, but when somebody is thinking about a facility, they are concerned about how are the people who need addiction treatment going to get that serious and relatively long-term, expensive, specialized treatment?
I don't know if that was a question to me, Mayor Fitzgerald, but oh, you went on mute.
On, basic, I guess, let me frame it up a little bit better. Trent asked us to think about coordination among these cities. What else can we do to coordinate? And I love what we're hearing about the Built for Zero and that it's up and running. It's really fantastic. But then let's think about how do we get coordinated? I feel like we all need to understand better how to get this. I know there's no easy answer, but it's a big question. How do you get addiction treatment into the mix here, and how do we pay for it? I talked to Chair Smith about that a little bit too. Do you have anything to help us with thinking about that?
Well, I mean, it is an enormous gap that I think we're all familiar with, and that, Oregon is historically and now, we hear this all the time, right? We're at the bottom of the list in terms of access to addiction and recovery services in the United States, and that's just a huge challenge. The supportive housing services measure can't fix that. That's part of the answer, is that there are other systems that we need to bring together and braid together. So this is a kind of a coordination challenge. But that's another area where the Tri-County Planning Body, I think, could be very helpful, is on inter-systems coordination and integration. And there's, like with the housing systems that we're experiencing now, this boon of new resources that's also coming to the behavioral health system. So, Measure 110 is providing new funding for programs. Opioid settlement money is coming. The cannabis money. The state allocated quite a lot of money in the last session to this biennium for behavioral health services, including significant allocations to Clackamas County for including funding that could be used to establish a facility for folks who are not able to aid and assist in their own defense in a criminal justice context and need that kind of intensive care that you're talking about, Mayor Fitzgerald. So I don't have a profound good news answer to this, but I do think that it's something that we're grappling with as very, probably one of the most serious gaps that kind of bedevil the success of ending homelessness. Part of that is providing the appropriate medical services to folks that need them. And so it's about getting us all together.
So I think that's a part of the coordination that I'm really interested in. And we all have members of the public, ourselves, our neighbors, who are really concerned about maintaining hope that we can make progress in this. And so there's probably some communication we can all do in terms of coordination, and maybe we can help advocate for this funding. But I'm interested in a lot more coordination so that we can use the forces of all these cities to help you and the experts make more progress.
I just want to piggyback on what Vahid was saying with the funding that's coming around right now from Measure 110. Some of those dollars is I think $5 million to Clackamas County behavioral health program for that aid and assist housing programming. So that's a very specific number that's coming in this direction. And then likewise, I think it's around $14 million have been allocated to programs within Clackamas County through the BURN, which is the Behavioral Health Resource Network. And that's facilitated, that's not managed, the dollars aren't managed, but it's facilitated by our behavioral health director here at Clackamas County. So the Behavioral Health Division is a wholly separate set of offices from what Vahid and his team does. But of course, they're all in the same division of Health, Housing, and Human Services. There's a lot going on right there. And as you know, I mean, there's a lot of mixed feelings about the success or not of Measure 110, depending on what you're reading. But it's still a relatively new program that's trying to thrive while a pandemic is also, trying to curve back around. So it's a pretty complicated conversation. What I can promise you is that the state legislature will definitely take up conversations around Measure 110 addictions. And so you'll have more opportunities to talk about that and think about that and what those resources mean for your individual cities, Clackamas County at large, and all the programs that work in between.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, just about at the end. Mayor Buck, one last question.
Just a real quick comment, just to follow on Mayor Fitzgerald's comments about 110. Of the $300 million that the state's allocated now in $110, it's important to to recognize that zero of those dollars are going to the specialized inpatient treatment care that most people suffering from addiction need. So that's just, I mean, as we have conversations with our representatives and at the state level about how measure when $10 can be reallocated, none of this is going to the type of treatment that people in the throes of any kind of drug or alcohol addiction are in need of.
Great. Well, thank you. Great discussion. Thank you, Vahid, for all your good work, and keep going, and whatever we can do to help. It's appreciated. Mayor Hodgson, you ready for the second half and present our TriMet folks?
Oh, that was pretty smooth there, Paul. I appreciate that very much. And just so you all know, Paul and I were texting or messaging back and forth, and I thought Paul was doing a really good job of carrying the meeting here forward. So now that I'm stepping in, now we're really going to run over. So sorry, and do the best I can. Thanks, Paul. Vahid and staff, thank you so much for the presentation. Sorry, I'm late and I'll catch the replay, but it is a huge issue that we are faced with. And we saw, I think today, Portland's recent decision and resolutions that they passed. So it's going to be an interesting lift there with them in Multnomah County. So yes, the TriMet Forward Together comment letter. I'll have Trent introduce that and take us through that real quick. And then we can decide whether or not we need to edit anything or approve it and move it on to the next phase there. Trent.
Thanks so much. Forward Together is a service plan concept that TriMet has been working on throughout the year. It became made, I think, available for comment in late September. And the comment period closed just a couple days ago, but they are graciously keeping it open for knowing that this group is having this conversation today with this letter. So at the October C4 Metro Subcommittee meeting, there was a presentation. Grant O'Connell, who's with us here today from TriMet, presented on what is in that Forward Together service plan concept. And there was a variety of comments from the C4 Metro Subcommittee group. Many of y'all are in here today. The recommendation from that committee, which is a non-voting subcommittee, was that the C4 body take a more formal position in the way of a letter. And that is what we have before you today as a draft. No one has seen that. Well, I'll say none of y'all have seen this except for what's been in the packet, but it's based on comments that were provided at that October C4 Metro Subcommittee meeting, combined with comments and sentiments y'all have made throughout the year about transit, and combine and sort of crafted underneath those four overarching value sort of statements around transit that C4 has had, which are specifically create an efficient system, complete the system, enhance the last mile services, and enhance awareness of services. So that's how the letter is structured. Grant O'Connell is here if you have, I think, more technical questions about the concept itself. Not necessarily here for a presentation because that was given to the subcommittee. The video is there in your packet to go back and watch. Hopefully some of y'all were able to do it if you weren't able to make the subcommittee. But the in between there is that Grant's available for questions, and I'm of course here to help you determine if this was the right letter for C4. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Trent. Appreciate that. Grant, good evening. How are you, sir? Good.
Doing well. Thank you.
Good. Any questions for Grant before we discuss the letter? Don't all raise your hands at once. Okay, then we'll move into conversation about the letter. Is there any thoughts on the letter and the ask from C4 back in, or to send on to TriMet for feedback about their program here? Yes, Councilor Heisey.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you had an opportunity or not, but I did go to the one of the in-person meetings around this that TriMet hosted. There was one at the Harmony campus in Clackamas Community College, so pretty convenient for me. And it was really nice to go and talk with the staff who were hosting those and hear their feedback on what people were talking about. And honestly, it sounds like this is getting a pretty decent reception. I think those in-person meetings have been critical for making sure that people have the opportunity to explain where their personal lives are impacted. And it seems like it's helping to fine tune or will help to fine tune a lot of what's being proposed in there. So that was just really nice to see. And I wanted to give kudos to TriMet for doing that. As you guys know, if you were at the subcommittee meeting, Milwaukee, honestly, we're pretty happy with this proposal. It has there's a lot of good changes in here. In talking with the community, I have heard one person express concerns about one of the lines that is being removed. So I guess I just want to reflect back a little bit of positivity in light of the overall content of the letter. I do think that the call for increased attention to kind of the final mile and better interaction between our smaller transit providers and TriMet as this concept is moving forward makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good thing to call out. As for impacts to my community, it honestly is a fairly positive outcome for us.
Great. Thank you very
I'll
much.
just mention, we did hear your comments regarding the line 75 going into Milwaukee. That was passed on to me by the staff members there. So we've got that too. Thanks.
Mr. Myers.
Good evening, everyone. One of the more exciting things that I've heard that some of our regional providers are experimenting with is the door-to-door service. And it has a special promise for the rural and unincorporated areas. These are usually services that are provided to disabled or the elderly. I'm wondering whether or not that was part of what was discussed, whether TriMet is giving any consideration to that type of thing. Thanks a lot.
Briefly, this project was focused on just fine-tuning our fixed route network to make sure that it's as good as it can be. Those door-to-door options, given our labor situation, aren't the most cost-effective solutions, but we know they can be certainly very powerful for folks. And I think a better avenue to explore that is through the regional coordination program and the services with a lower cost structure, frankly. But we continue to monitor that and consider it, but it wasn't specifically part of the scope of this project.
Sorry, Mayor Buck, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. So first to the letter, I think in general, the letter looks good. I mean, especially on the communications piece, like Councilor Heisey said, I mean, we found that even though there's a couple lines being cut in LO, the added service is really good and needed. But it was just that because we didn't receive any communication on it, it took us a little bit to ferret through that. So, we're hearing from residents about it, or, rambling on Nextdoor and social media about why TriMet's cutting service. And, we're like, what? Well, hold on, where's this coming from? So it would be good to have more outreach to the cities and our staff so we know what's coming forward so we can digest it, maybe, a day before the residents. But I wanted to ask Grant if, can you talk to us a little bit about, are there some, I hear about these like pilot programs for kind of inner city circulators or even just more community circulars? I guess it may not be just one city, but between a couple. Is that something that you all are working on with? I think some of it was with recovery dollars, with the ARPA dollars or otherwise.
Well, I want to just acknowledge your first point. So Scott Siegel on your staff has really been a great participant and participated in the workshops. And before we went public, we did offer the opportunity to preview this with him. So I'm sorry that didn't happen, but please know that we did try. But I do want to also, while that sort of subject is open, I want to acknowledge, I see in the letter the call for, extended comment period, and also making sure that there's public testimony at the board. And to the public testimony, it's a public organization, so there's always public testimony at those board meetings. But also, specifically, we recognize we're not extending the comment period. And I think that it's more a matter of, do you want 30 more days now, or do you want 2 months out of each year, every year going forward, where we would continue to come back to the community with the concept? I think folks maybe got misunderstood that, a lot of things when you go through Metro, maybe something gets adopted and then it's sort of set in stone. This is a concept. We took great pains to call it that, and say that this is sort of like a guidebook for what we might look at each year going forward. It is not set in stone. And before anything actually changes, we will certainly do more communication with you all and more community engagement and more study and more analysis. So I think that's really just critical to understand. And that's why we're not extending the comment period, because we will be each year coming back for 2 separate rounds of engagement. But to your second point about, inner city circulators, and we are trying to make more, permeability between the counties. That's why we looked at that service between Tualatin and Oregon City. But again, some of those, it's also important to remember that this isn't per se a long range plan. It's rather acknowledging that our long range plans were probably not relevant given the new normal of transportation as induced by COVID. And so this is rather kind of a retooling to the new normal. But some of those other things like the Clackamas to Columbia corridor on 172nd, we know with Happy Valley that's going to grow and come, and those sort of inner city opportunities are there and ripe, and we're going to work on them, but they're a little bit more long range than what this plan is trying to just pivot and understand the new normal of transportation given the pandemic. So anyway.
Thank you, Grant.
Commissioner Lewis.
Sure, thanks. I just want to lift up that it's hard to not like something called Forward Together. You took 2 words that people like, stuck them together. So yes, we would all like to go forward together. I do think that there's a little bit of conflation between a win back strategy, winning back ridership, but also planning for the future, where you are rejiggering lines in a way that you haven't fully anticipated what loss that will cause. I want to note that West Lynn is not here tonight, but West Lynn did submit a letter, I believe over 2 weeks ago, and there are 4 points I would echo just from the west side. There's far more uncertainty. And the level of service conversation definitely needs to be had on the west side of Clackamas. And I look forward to that. In terms of making sure that transit works for Clackamas County, I do think that the plan goes partway there in recognizing that if you don't have frequency and dependability, you're not going to be able to win back or gain new ridership. But I feel like the uncertainty that you say we're going to iterate in the future as the lines come online makes it really hard for the system to be reflective of what we need here in Clackamas. So I look forward to seeing the next steps and stages, but I just want to lift up the concerns. Again, really the 4 points from West Lynn and just the continued weakness on the west side.
Absolutely. Definitely want to coordinate.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yeah, I just want to, it's in the letter, but I still want to just highlight for you all that the concern here is that we're not confident as of yet that the riders currently today and the lines currently are fully aware of what they have and what they're about to lose and what might be reconfigured. And along with that, when a line is dropped, there is a lot of people that, well, when a line exists, there's a lot of people that have within a certain zone around that line have ability for lift services, and people sometimes choose to live where they live because it's near a transit line. So people just can't up and move their property and get themselves back up. But what we learned from when lines do get dropped, I've heard it, is the most painful one is when people who need the lift service, who are disabled in some way or form, when they lose that service, or they are, now today they're not disabled, but tomorrow they are, that they're not close enough to it to even apply for it. So we're just concerned about that. We asked for more coverage, and in some areas, I think we're going to get less, but that's a very vulnerable population. So our concern, again, just to wrap it up, we're not really confident that all the riders are aware of what's the change, and that the outreach plan doesn't seem to be in depth enough at this point. So that's my 2 cents.
And I'll just reiterate, before any of the changes actually happen, there would be 2 rounds of public engagement in the fall and then in the spring again, before each budget cycle. And then TriMet code requires a public hearing before the elimination of a line. So all of that would happen. This process here does not in itself constitute enough to say that we're going to eliminate a line. We have lots more to go before we would actually do any of that step. But your concerns are well-founded and understood. We have done the lift boundary analysis and are going to continue that conversation and understanding what those impacts are.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts for Grant or regarding the letter?
I'll be bold and put a motion on the floor to approve the letter as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Commissioner Savas and seconded by Mayor Fitzgerald to approve the letter as written by a sign of hands in your screens. The little icon piece, or raise them like Mayor Stemple just did. I will take those in favor. All right. Anyone opposed? Looks like the motion carries, so letter will go out as is. Mr. Myers, you have a question? Or you were just voting?
I was just voting. My iPad raises my hand through Zoom if I use my hand in real life. My apologies. Yeah, just voting.
That's good. Okay. Thank you all for that. Grant, thank you for joining us this evening, and I'm sure more to come on this particular topic in coming months and years as this continues to move forward. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. So if I pull up my trusty agenda here, looks like we are moving into updates and other business. So any JPAC impact updates? JPAC first.
MPAC first. I have to flip through my notes.
Okay. MPAC first.
Mayor Hudson, I can give you a quick update on it. I'll be real quick because we talked about a lot of these things this evening already. Last Wednesday, MPAC met. They're all informational items. The UGB exchange considerations, the 3 options from Metro, all, as you know, are in the Clackamas County. Metro's in receipt of the Clackamas County letter regarding our concerns and recommendations on that issue. We talked about the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan High Capacity Transit Strategy update. Commissioner Savas already mentioned we're concerned about underserved areas of Clackamas County, and we want some balance on that. Finally, we looked at the TriMet Forward. We've talked about that here today also. Last week, TriMet was in receipt of the letter from Clackamas County on our concerns about TriMet Forward Together service. And all that documentation is still available on the MPAC website. Now for November, the MPAC meeting has been moved up to next week because of Thanksgiving. There is information topic on the RTP needs assessment and performance measures. And then the action items are we're going to do an MPAC recommendation for the UGB exchange considerations, which is going to be interesting to see how we arrive at recommendations that take into consideration all the players that are going to be giving input to that. I know that Jamie Stasny is going to be briefing us on Monday on some recommendations. And then finally, we have an informational discussion from Metro on factors of homelessness and regional cooperation. And again, all that and the supporting documents are posted on the MPAC website. And with that, thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. Appreciate that. Councilor Heisey.
So we started the JPAC meeting with a presentation about Forward Together, which we all have just finished discussing. So I don't think I need to go into any more detail there. Happy to if I'm wrong about that. And then the latter portion of our meeting, we were discussing the draft plan for regional mobility policy. And this is a topic that we've seen a number of times now. And we're really updating the policy on how we're defining and measuring mobility in the Portland's metro system. And it's really wonky stuff, but it is probably one of the more major pieces of work that JPAC is doing that will have long-range impacts. Karen Burig on the county staff has been deeply involved in this work behind the scenes. And we've had multiple, I don't know, it's probably been before JPAC at least 3 or 4 times now. And it's looking very good. It's aligning our work around the region's values and goals and trying to get to the point where we can better address the part where we can never afford to meet our policy objectives. This is going to really affect cities. So it's something that I know all of your staff are paying attention to anyway, but it will be coming up as you go into your transportation system plan updates and doing that work, because it's going to change the metrics that we use on the ground. And it will also change some of the work that goes into deciding where funding goes. So it's really interesting stuff if you're nerdy enough. So if you want more detail, happy to give it, but that's the thumbnail sketch for now.
Okay, thank you very much. The Climate Action Plan Task Force update. I'm seeing head shaking, not much going on there. Trent.
Yeah, Councilor Pratt and Mayor Gamba are your 2 city people on that seat, I believe. And so, and there's just nothing happening on it right now. So,
okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Other business, I'll jump in first. I just wanted to say to Councilor Heisey, thank you to the city of Milwaukee for a great cities dinner this past Thursday. It was great to be back live and in person and actually see many of you and cajole and talk and break bread and whatnot. Some really great things going on in the city of Milwaukee. One of the real impressive pieces, we did a tour of the new library. It is a very well done library. Being a pseudo comic book geek, the Dark Horse comic mural was quite cool in the teen room. If you've not been over there, it's worth swinging by and taking a look at because it was pretty spectacular. So, but thank you. I look forward. Do we know who's hosting the next one? And that's probably January, I would think. So anyone know who's next?
Oregon City.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. So hopefully, Adam, Milwaukee set the bar high. I hope Oregon City can come through. So no challenge, just it's good. That's all that I have. Any other business?
Yeah.
Commissioner Scholl.
Mayor Hudson, I just want to couple kudos. One, the dinner in Milwaukee last week was outstanding. I really enjoyed meeting so many people I've never seen in person before. I was very impressed with the city of Milwaukee, their staff, the briefing, the council people, and the mayor is excellent. Also, here this week, Mayor Hodson, I had the privilege of coming to Canby and sitting down with your Chamber of Commerce for lunch. And Canby, you got a great town there. Thanks for all you're doing. Appreciate it. And the food was great.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Sorry I missed you. We'll have to coordinate some time and I'll give you the full tour. All right. Any other business going on in Clackamas County? Sorry, Martin, I missed your hand. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, if the time's right, I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about the urban growth boundary land swap that we have been looking at, and share with the committee some of my frustrations that I've come to realize over the last week. The executive summary is that the interface between Metro and the county, C4, and specifically the affected communities by the urban UGB land swap has really been poor. It's been very deficient. Those who know where we have been handling this, it's mostly been at Metro subcommittee, and they have been presented. They presented in June, they presented in September. And generally this body has received information from that, I believe, just from updates. There's really hasn't been anything directly from Metro on this. Nonetheless, it's very important. Clackamas County is a net loss here on UGB, any way you cut it. In early discussions, my recollection was that all of the discussions that and proposals or the proposals that Metro was making in terms of what land would be removed in Clackamas County from the UGB focused on 242nd Street, two large parcels that are east of the formerly the city of Damascus. And in September, they went to the city of Damascus and they presented their plans. And I believe that they presented these. And then those two potential exchange properties are options 1 and 2 in the October 12th final statement of the 3 potential options for transfers out. The problem that I have is the third option. The third option is essentially the second option. I'll back up and say what Metro needs to do is to find 350 acres to take out of the UGB so it can add property in Washington County. Options 1 and 2 both seem to have 350 acres, not by coincidence. But then what happened is that they created a third option that took one of the 242nd Street options, for some reason took 20-some acres off the top of it, and instead opts into including instead some property south of Redland Road adjacent to Oregon City. It's not known how much property they're talking about there. The only way to deduct to do it is through deduction by how much property they took out of the 242nd property that accompanies it in option 3. But I believe from the sequence of events, this new option 3 has not gone back to Damascus CPO. There hasn't been time to do that. So we don't know what Damascus CPO has to say about the loss of 20-some acres. More importantly, Metro has made absolutely no outreach efforts into the area south of Redland Road outside of Oregon City, which would be part of Holcomb CPO. I checked with Holcomb CPO. They haven't heard about it. Approximately 30 minutes before I entered into this meeting, I was checking my Facebook posts on this topic, and I saw somebody post from within the area of option 3, this unincorporated area that is currently within the UGB. She says, I know nothing. He says, I know nothing about this. I haven't heard anything about it. It's too bad the deadline is November 2nd to respond. What that person didn't know, and what I informed them, is that has been extended to November 8th. But the same people who have not heard anything about this potential land swap that involves their property values, potentially what Metro fees they may have to pay. None of them are hearing about this. None of them knew of the old deadline. None of them knew of the new deadline. There's an extreme problem with this. I have reached out to many people in this group and within the county trying to learn about this. I talked to Metro. I really didn't get any other information. I don't know what is magic about the deduction of the 20-some acres from the 242nd Street property, and I don't know why they've added in the Oregon City property. I would like to, I won't, but I would like to ask the C4 body to suggest to our MPAC representatives that when this reaches MPAC next week, that they ask that option 3 be removed. I don't think it's a good idea to do that necessarily, because I think that puts us slightly at odds, or perhaps puts some shade on what the county itself has objected to. But what I do think we should get behind is the problem with outreach. This is a problem that extends with Metro into a lot of different areas, but it is especially endemic here. We just haven't heard anything about these land swaps, and the people that are actually impacted by it haven't heard anything either. The implications of the property close to Oregon City of removing that from the UGB may extend into other areas. It could extend into the county fisc. It could extend into a use of vehicle registration fees, which is currently the only way that the county funds improvements of roads in the rural areas. Anyways, that's kind of been on my mind. I've burned up a lot of Google time trying to figure it out. I'm a little bit frustrated by what it has, but I'd like to both suggest to the body to consider sending our impact people there to talk about this problem of not enough notice, not enough interaction. And then I'm wondering whether or not there is any feeling for the group in making this more of an issue at some other later time. Get it on the calendar, talk about outreach that Metro makes and how we coordinate with ourselves, within the county, on perhaps being proactive on these type of issues. In hindsight, it would have been a great thing to have had the county come together and decide for itself what properties it would like to have removed from the UGB, instead of having it be from the opposite end. Anyways, that's all I have. I appreciate you listening. I apologize for coming so late on all of this, but literally that's one of my complaints about the whole thing too. So thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I appreciate that. Commissioner Stavis, and then Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, real briefly, I concur with Martin's concerns. It seems to me that if an area is being identified, that there should have at least maybe been a mailing. I think there are a lot of process issues here, but frankly, the other thing that's not out there yet is really, I think in my opinion, the essential data economics of what this means for folks. So some people think that they're going to be out of or in a different tax bracket and they'll have their taxes reduced. Apparently that's not the case. But I can't be 100% assured of that unless the data's out there to support that and to actually dispel anyone out there that actually believes that. The other aspect, I think it's really important. Some of us here that are kind of transportation wonks know this. If you're in the UGB, you have certain buckets of money, eligible monies for transportation that we can apply for. And if you're in the rural areas or you're outside the UGB, there's not very many buckets of transportation funding, for example. So that's a big loss. And I envisioned really at the time when I first heard of this, that these lands would be maybe lands that are either more natural resource oriented or slope lands with no housing on them. But each of these identified properties have lots of housing subdivisions in them. Each of them has a subdivision. These are developed properties. So it's not as though these are bare lands. These are lands that, at some point are going to have failing septics or need to be connected. We're already experiencing that in this part of Clackamas County today at a great expense. And, we're going to have to rescue, one of the treatment plants out there. And that means building a pipeline that's going to go past one of these areas, by the way. So now's the time, and it has been the time, we're building capacity on the sewerage aspect, for example. And, we're anticipating that those future customers are going to help defray those costs by being part of the future district. So here we are constantly spending money, millions, tens of hundreds of millions of dollars on increasing our sewerage and capacity based on the Portland and Metro studies for our growth studies, and yet we're having some of that yanked away. So that's almost defeats our purpose. So I think those are the concerns. We have sent a letter to Metro asking for a stay. The commissioners want to have more data and see some more things. So I think there's opportunity and time to up our game, or maybe collectively with Metro ask for a study that brings more information forward. But I'll stop there. I hear your concerns, Martin. You heard some of mine, and I guess Councilor Lewis has a few things to say.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I have a couple of things I want to say. I don't want to be part of hijacking what is the good of the order agenda item for what is turning into probably a larger conversation.
Yeah, it is.
But this is a year-long process that we are past the halfway point and not towards the end yet. So when we're looking at the COO recommendation of 3 kind of typologies of how to move forward, that's narrowing the funnel. And whichever one is recommended, that's when the public notice, that's when the postcards go out. That's when we're going to all the neighborhood associations, that sort of thing. Because what started out as a map that literally had parcels north, west, south, east, in all of the 3 counties, we weren't going to send postcards to the entire ring if that wasn't all seriously on the table. So that's the point we're at, which is how do we get down one level deeper? And then I also just want to be extremely clear and make sure everybody here understands there are 2 lines around the region. One is the urban growth boundary, and that is a land use line. And the other is a metro service district that is technically our special district. When you're talking about taxation and services, the urban service district is what matters. And when you're talking about land use, that's the UGB. So that will help you separate when somebody's asking about, does this get me out of my taxes for metro? The answer is no, because we're talking about UGB, not your special district status. Finally, when you are looking at the potential to be removed from UGB, we're not talking about any zoning change. So if you are with whatever zone you have, R10, R15, whatever, that won't change, just your status within or without UGB will change. So people who are worried about what it means for their personal property, that will not change. In terms of the investment, that's where Metro staff and Clackamas staff have been back and forth. We have been back and forth with city staff in some of the cities that touch the edge. And we have asked, what are the investments you've put in? And to our knowledge, we are not moving forward with properties that have active investments in them from the municipal level. But that's where we need to keep working. And I know this is already longer than some people want to be here, but that's just a couple of facts, and more conversation will be happening again at the MPAC level, and I look forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other business items?
Well, I'm sorry, I think I need some clarification. Martin asked 2 questions. I guess it wasn't like moved or seconded, but you know, there was a question about, will impact members take this forward? I guess there's a variety of impact members here who are listening to this, and they can make that choice at a minimum. But I also heard, is there interest to bring this conversation in a more robust way back to the C4 committee? And if that's a desire by this board, what would you like to talk about to help me help you have that conversation?
Okay, so is this a conversation that we want to have? I see 1 thumb up, 2 thumbs up, 3, 4. Okay, so slowly it looks like, yes, we have a temperature of the room that, yes, this should be a bigger conversation. What aspect of the conversation or this issue do we want staff to work to bring back as a conversation piece? Commissioner Schull, you have a comment?
Yes, well, Mayor Hudson, I was going to suggest that maybe the way we could do this, because I think we need some time, perhaps Commissioner Savas and Mr. Myers and myself can chat tomorrow, organize something, and maybe send an email to everybody here tonight and come up with some idea on how we want to proceed, discuss this, and come up with a statement that I can make at MPAC next Wednesday. Would that be a good idea? Because I don't know if we can auger through the details tonight. Does that sound reasonable?
What To me, it does. It seems like a step in that direction. What say the group?
Well, I'm just gonna jump in and maybe ask Commissioner Scholl, bearing in mind the letter we sent and we asked for some information, would it be more timely to await that and then see, so that way we have more substance and more rationale for whatever we take. I think it's really more, I think the way the letter and the intent of or the tone of the conversation at the BCC level was, okay, we're exploring this, we need more data, bring it back. So it seems a little bit premature. I'm okay with it, with taking the steps of bringing it to, to MPAC or having this group C4 having a voice. But I'm not sure we have what we need just yet.
Yeah, well, that's my concern. So without making a commitment here tonight, could you and Mr. Myers and I talk about that tomorrow a little bit, and then just maybe send an email out to Trent to send out to the rest of the C4 tonight on just what we came up with on that? Because I agree it's going to be difficult for us to come up with some sort of action before next Wednesday that's going to be well thought out and considered.
Sure, I have to figure out what time works for me, and maybe someone can throw some times together that we can make that happen.
I need to do it early if possible.
We'll let you guys coordinate that, and
Yeah,
that will give us some direction. If
yeah,
like as Commissioner or Council Lewis had said, we're kind of halfway through an almost year-long process, and so it still sounds like there's time to kind of flesh out what we want to address, and so let's maybe start there, and then we can discuss further. Our executive board meets on Monday. No,
Next Monday, 2 Mondays, it's the second
2
Monday.
Mondays, excuse me.
Yep.
Maybe we might be able to chat about that at that meeting as well.
okay.
All right, so two things, and I think I can maybe close it out. The first one is I can find some way to poll this group, or you can reach out to me individually without polling. I'll have my email. If this is a topic that's important to you and questions that are specific that you want to know about, you can absolutely reach out to me. But if I don't hear from you by Monday, I'll send something specifically to the members about what specifically a more robust conversation on this topic could look like at C4. And the other one's a little more inside baseball. Sorry, no pun intended, bottom of the 8th. But commissioners and Martin, please be careful about how you talk about that, because the county has taken an official position. And Martin, outside of the C4 table, you are a CPO rep, which is advisory to the Board of County Commissioners. So there might be a nuance in that position taking that you're approaching there. Appropriate for you, I think, you to raise up for the C4 table with your C4 seat here. Once it gets into that conversation with the county commissioners, what you're sort of requesting versus what the board has already taken an official position on could get nuanced. And so I just want to offer that caution to you. Again, really inside baseball.
No, that's why we pay you the big bucks, Trent, to keep us in order. Mr. Gronke.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind the group that the agenda for next week's MPAC meeting has already been set. And the timeline is running. As I read the agenda, if MPAC is being asked to take a position and make a recommendation next Wednesday on this topic. And if this group wants to take an adversarial position, it's important that you make that decision as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. Okay. So Mayor Buck at the wire.
Can I just say, it may be, I know that, Metro has done outreach to the adjacent cities, right? The concerned areas, Happy Valley and Oregon City, who are both amenable to these suggestions. And of course, it's cities who are responsible for, who do the planning, right? In terms of urbanization. So if what may be helpful, and the county, it's helpful in the letter that the county's put together. So the group knows, I mean, it's registered that the county has concerns around the proposal. The kind of to what Councilor Lewis was saying, they're not looking at Metro. In fact, the council, they don't want a firm kind of recommendation from MPAC, like it needs to be these properties. And if it's not these properties, then don't go forward, right? Because they have to yet do the outreach. And they have to go to the certain property owners and figure out, I mean, it is a property by property kind of a situation. So they're looking more for, of these recommendations, what should they prioritize, or what are factors they should look at? And they heard some of those in the letter that Clackamas sent. So those kind of factors are helpful, and they could guide MPAC members in giving a recommendation to the council in terms of the options that they're looking at. What would be important, because I think they're considering these the concerns of the county commissioners in proffering some of these in the way they've set forth the recommendations. So I'm just trying to think of ways it could be effective other than we don't like it. I mean, that's not they're going to make a recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Buck.
Real quick, if I could, I don't anticipate anything. I'm not suggesting anything adversarial. I don't think that's where we find ourselves right now. I think of more of a comment on it, and a comment for concern, but less a complete objection. I'm not hearing anybody really supporting that. It's really just, except the county itself. I want to register a concern about the lack of outreach to the subject communities. That's really all. Thank you.
Well, and that's good. I will say that we have had community members come to MPAC in support. I mean, asking to, they are in favor. We've only heard comments from impacted residents in favor of the proposal. So there's some outreach going on because regular folks are showing up to the meeting.
Okay. More to come. Trent, are you good?
I am.
Okay. All right. No more business. We're done for the evening. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Brett. Clackamas County, we're out. Thank you very much. See you guys next month.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.